If your house has gained $500,000 in value over the time that you've owned the house, Uncle Sam really wants to have a conversation with you. Now, the problem is that conversation is expensive. It could cost you $75,000 if you're not prepared. I am a local real estate advisor here in the Northern Virginia area that for the last decade, I have loved helping families think through and navigate how to utilize real estate, making wise decisions, particularly in their kind of years of approaching retirement or after retirement. So if you're over the age of 50, you're going to have questions in regards to the real estate decisions that you make, and we want to help you make wise decisions that you don't regret. So today we're tackling the big financial decision that most retirees will have to face, and that is, should you sell the family home? Now that's a big, important question. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about around that question. So welcome what I'm calling our real estate and retirement series on my YouTube channel, where I just really want to cut through a lot of, I think, the confusion and just to help you make smart housing decisions, right, for the golden years, which is really important. So whether you're 55 and just starting to think about retirement, or you're 70 and wondering if now is the time to maybe downsize, this episode is going to save you money and heartache. That is my goal. Now let me tell you about the Johnsons. Tom and Susan, I helped them last year. They were 62 years old, and they had bought their 4-bedroom home back in 1995 for, wait for it, $180,000. Today, it's worth $680,000 simply just because of appreciation. And so that was right on the target of a $500,000 gain. Now, when they called me, they had really no idea what the decision to potentially sell the house could cost them. They thought it was just simple, sell the big house, buy a smaller house, and pocket the difference. But really, it's not that simple. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to make the decision the right way, okay, to be able to serve you. But before we dive into just the Johnson story, I do want to make a note that selling a family home is both emotional and factual. And I just think it's really important to recognize both of those realities, is because we don't want a person to make a decision simply based upon emotion alone, because often they regret those decisions. But that doesn't disregard the reality that there is emotion. Reality is, if this is a family home, you have tons of memories, right? There's been celebrations, birthdays, children born, children graduated, maybe even marriages, maybe even grandchildren. You never know, right? A lot of memories have gone into that home. You've poured your personal time and sweat and money into this house for years. And there's a love to that. And moving on to another season of selling that is often very hard for folks. And I think, well, I know, like, that's okay. And so I just want you to hear that first and foremost. It's normal. And it's okay to grieve that. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the decisions to sell really need to be factual. Though I also think you need to feel the freedom to truly grieve. And so before you really jump into really deciding the facts of if you should sell, if you shouldn't, take the time to consider just the emotional effect. Have those conversations with family, with spouse. Think about that. Grieve, cry, it's okay. But then that'll help you as you come to the factual conversation to not necessarily make decisions based upon emotion. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to teach you how to answer really, I think, the most important 3 questions that will help make this decision crystal clear for you. The first question is, what is the house really costing you to keep it? The second question is, how much money would you actually net if you sold? And then the last question is, what could you do with that money to improve your retirement? Okay, so let's just start off with the first question. Most people think they know how much their house costs them, simply by thinking about their mortgage payment, right? And maybe property taxes. But that's really just kind of the tip, right, of the iceberg. Here's what you need to add up, right, when you're writing this down. You need to, yes, property taxes. Write down what you actually paid last year, okay? Not what you think you paid, what you actually paid. For the Johnsons, that was $8,400. That was their taxes. Then you have to write down insurance. And if you haven't stopped and looked around for a while, or even if you haven't shopped in a while, you might notice that these prices have been going up and they're expensive. You know, the Johnsons were paying $2,200 a year for their insurance. Then you take utilities. Take all of them, right? Add that up. How much are you paying? Electric, gas, water, sewer, trash, internet. For them, that was about $3,600 per year. It was pretty good for them, actually. Now, here's the biggest one that people often miss is maintenance and repairs. Okay, how much did you spend last year on your house, right? New roof, HVAC, repairs, painting, plumbing, landscaping. Be honest, right, with that number. The Johnsons spent $5,000, and that was really a very light year for them. So if you just take this $8,400 that they were spending on property taxes, plus $2,200, plus $3,600, plus $5,000, that equals $19,200 per year that the Johnsons were spending in costs to keep the home. And that's $1,600 per month just to keep the house. And that is not counting any mortgage payments. But wait, there's one more cost that often nobody really talks about, and it's called opportunity cost. So if your house is worth $600,000, that money is tied up into it, right? It's not earning you anything. And if you were just to earn 5% interest for a moment on that money, well, that's increasing your income $30,000 per year, right, that you're not making right now. So really, for the first question that I would encourage you is, how much is the home costing you to keep it, right? So for the Johnsons, the house was costing them about $50,000 per year just to keep it. Now let's talk about that question too, though, right? Because the whole picture is important. The second question is, how much are you actually netting if you sold the home? And this is where people sometimes make expensive mistakes. Okay, it's not just the sales price minus what you owe, right? There are going to be selling costs, and those can add up fast. Real estate agent commissions, they're negotiable. You got to talk to your agent about it, but typically the rule of thumb is say, hey, take 6% of the sales price, and so for $680,000 home, that can be about $40,000. Then you have to take title insurance, attorney fees, transfer taxes, potentially home inspection repairs, staging costs, just to assess what that total might be. For the Johnsons last year, it was really just about $4,200 in total that they ended up paying. So for them, they sold it at $680,000, subtract $42,000, and they walked away with about $638,000 for them to wisely use. That was their net. But here's where really I think the tax question comes in. And guys, this is huge. The Johnsons bought for $180,000 and then they sold for $680,000. So that's a $500,000 gain. Now here's what most people don't know. If you've lived in your home as your primary residence for 2 out of the last 5 years, you can exclude up to $250,000 in gains if you're single, and up to $500,000 if you're married. So the Johnsons, they were married, they had a $500,000 gain, and they received a $500,000 exclusion, meaning they paid 0 taxes on that. But if you wait too long or move out first, you can lose this exemption. Okay, so I've seen people lose hundreds of thousands because they just didn't understand the timing. So here's just something important for, I think, married couples just to be aware of, right? You need to create a plan. Okay, create a plan. If you maybe had a spouse that passed away, you have up to 2 years to sell and still get the full, for this example, $500,000 exemption. And there's also something called a step-up basis. So if a spouse passes away, the IRS often will increase your original purchase price up to maybe half of the market value at the time that they passed. And so that can really dramatically reduce potential taxable gains. But what if maybe your gain is more than $500,000? Well, if you don't qualify for the full exemption, don't panic. All right, there's still strategies to take. For example, you could consider an installment sale. This is where you spread out the payments over several years, just to maybe try to stay in that lower tax bracket. You have to time the sale with investment losses. So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle with this. But this is why you want a team advising you on what the best options are. Like if you were to move to another state that did not have capital gains tax anyways, then you could establish maybe a residency there first, and then you could sell. So there's a lot of complex situations when it comes to if you're having to pay taxes on the capital gains. This is where a CPA who specializes in real estate transactions for tax planning is really important. An estate planning attorney, if you're talking about maybe gifting strategies or trusts to save some of that money on taxes, and definitely a financial advisor, okay, who understands how this fits into your overall retirement plan, okay? So have a good team. And that's really, I think, just my bottom line, right, kind of encouragement is have a team, but understand you want to best understand all of the options before you sell and not after. Okay, so question 2 for the Johnsons. They'd net $638,000 tax-free. Now you have one more question you got to ask. This is question 3. What would you do with that money? Now this is kind of where it gets exciting, right? Now the Johnsons, they ended up finding a beautiful 2-bedroom villa for about $450,000. It was perfect, really, just for their needs, low maintenance. So they took the $638,000 that they made minus $450,000. That equals $188,000 that they had left over. So what does their new lifestyle look like, right? I mean, that's kind of the question. Well, they had HOA fees, which covered some of the exterior maintenance, landscaping, and some utilities, about $300 per month. They had property taxes that on a smaller place, right? So it lowered to about $150 per month. Insurance, smaller place, lowered, was $100 per month. And then they had, of course, remaining utilities, which was about $150 per month. So that total was $700 per month. And they were spending $1,600 before. So they're saving $900 per month, right? That's $10,800 every year, right? That they are saving. Plus, they have $188,000 to now invest. Now, if you were just to get a 5% super low interest, right? That's $9,400 per year in income. Guys, that's a lot, right? $10,800 in savings plus $9,400 in investment income. That equals about $20,000 per year in improved cash flow, just simply from making that one move. Okay, that's $1,700 more a month on retirement, especially for folks that get into a fixed income that may really, really benefit. So here's the decision framework. Run these 3 calculations, okay? What's your home really gonna cost you per year, including opportunity cost? What would you net from selling? Don't forget about that tax exemption, okay, if you qualify. And then the third question is, what could you do with that money? And compare the new costs plus investment income to your current situation. All right, that's important there. So if the math works strongly in your favor of selling, like it did for the Johnsons, then the decision becomes clear, right, that you should do it. But I also always like to say, remember, it's not just about money, right? Life's not just about money. Stay in your home if you love it, if you can afford it, and you have a plan for aging in place, okay? That's really key. So just make sure you're choosing and not defaulting. Some people should absolutely stay in their house. Stay if you can easily afford all the costs. Stay if you make the house accessible for aging. And especially if it brings you joy, if it brings you genuine joy, stay. Right? The key is making a conscious choice based upon facts and not just staying because change feels scary. All right. So your house very well may be your biggest asset. It usually is. But assets should also work for you, right? And not against you. So if you're finding it works against you, then this might be a good time to change. But if it's working for you in many of the other ways, right, then just stay. All right, guys, so I actually have some homework for you. I want you to run these 3 calculations for your situation. I've created a free calculator that does all the math for you, okay? The link is in the description, okay? That's where you can find it. Plug in your numbers and see what the math tells you, right? Then decide with your heart and your head what is best, all right? Now, next week, we're going to be talking about, I think, just kind of about how to use a house to fund retirement, what reverse mortgages might look like, rent-back arrangements, strategies that a lot of people maybe never considered. So if this helps you, and maybe even thinking about some of these different situations, hit that like button, okay? Subscribe. Love for you to be able to get that content when we send it out. So love to hear what you thought about this, your questions, your observations, anything that I can do to serve you. My LinkedIn profile is there. You can always reach out. So I do hope this serves you and the stage that you are in. And God is good. He's got a plan. Just be wise with it. All right. Have a wonderful day.